Here's some irony. The Viking Age began circa 793 AD with the famous raid on the monastery at Lindisfarne on the northern English coast. The Vikings that attacked the monastery were probably Danes, and the ancestors of the people at Lindisfarne and many of the people of England were Danes. Well, not Dane Danes, but they were from Denmark and Germany, near the modern German-Danish border. In the 400s, the native people of England and Wales, the Britons, were subjected to successive waves of invasion by the tribes known to history as the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes. The Angles, or as the Romans referred to them, the Ængle, are believed to have inhabited the area of today's central Denmark. Just to the south of them was another Germanic tribe, the Saxones. In the north of Denmark were the Jutes. The far north of Denmark, even today, is called Jutland, not because it juts into the sea, but because the people that lived there in ancient times were the Jutes. Unfortunately for the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, the area of Europe they inhabited was either surrounded by water on three sides or crowded with many other Germanic tribes, not all of which were friendly. But, they were early medieval German tribes, so none were friendly. So, the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, who seem to have been able to, at the very least, reach an understanding about finding a new land to live in, decided to make their way across the sea to Britannia, as the Romans called the British Isles. When Roman Britain fell around 400, much of the southern part of the island was a Romano-Briton hybrid culture, and among the upper classes, Roman law, customs, dress, etc. were common. The Anglo-Saxons and Jutes put an end to that in medieval fashion. A Roman citizen accused of a crime would often be given a hearing in which evidence or witnesses were brought forward and the accused was found either guilty or innocent based on that. That was the theory. But again, the Roman system was more equitable than that of the other cultures of Europe. If a person was found guilty, however, whipping, beatings, death in the arena, crucifixion, all of these were possible ways for a person to be punished or killed. Saxon law and Saxon punishments were a little different, and Saxon legal tradition and punishments lasted until the Norman invasion of 1066 and beyond. We will tell you about the most famous Saxon punishment in a moment, but in most cases, the punishment was not only the punishment, but the trial as well. Does that make sense? It will in a moment. You've likely seen movies about Saxon times where a man was accused of a crime and ordered to go through trial by combat. Here's a simple example. Let's say that Theodoric, a young man from Sussex, a present-day name that comes from the Saxon words for southern lands of the Saxons, is accused of insulting a local chief or clergyman. He vigorously denies it and says he will prove it if only given a chance. The chance in this case isn't to find a witness who can testify that Theodoric was with the witness when the alleged insult took place. No, Theodoric's chance is this. He will face a champion of that chief or clergyman's choosing in combat to the death. If Theodoric wins, well, according to Saxon tradition, God or the gods has allowed him to achieve or given him victory because he is innocent. Over the decades and the next century or so, the Angles and Saxons cultures merged into what we know today as Saxon England. The Jutes are believed to have settled in East Anglia, the large jutting, no pun intended, peninsula on the southern part of England's east coast. Unfortunately, records of the Jutes are almost non-existent after they arrive in England. Most believe they were assimilated into the larger Anglo-Saxon culture. The creation myth of Saxon rule, in most cases when historians say Saxon regarding England, it is just a shorter way of saying Anglo-Saxon, is similar to the Roman myth of the brothers Romulus and Remus, who are believed to have found Rome. Legend has it that the Saxon brothers, Horsa and Hengist, led the Angles, Saxons and Jutes to Britain. There are entire books and legends, such as the famous Beowulf, circa 1000 AD. We also know directly about the establishment of Saxon law and punishments in the lands they had taken, which included most of what we know as England. Wales remained Britain, however, and the Picts, the tribe which inhabited present-day Scotland, remained unconquered as well. We all know that the Romans inflicted horrible punishments on their enemies or those convicted of crimes. One of the great things about the Romans was that, more than any other people in Europe, they had an established system of laws that were written down. Romans were proud to say that what separated them from the savage tribes around them was Roman law. Roman law protected society, business, and its citizens, at least in theory. Conversely, if Theodoric is guilty, then it would have been quite apparent to everyone around that heaven was clearly not happy with Theodoric and allowed him to be killed, because he was guilty. It makes sense if you believe that God, or the gods, and the Saxons had gods, many of them Germanic versions of Thor and Odin, in heaven care that much to make that kind of judgment. Honestly, it doesn't matter what you think, the Saxons believed it. People found to be accusing multiple people of serious crimes were eventually punished as well. Most of the other famous punishments of Saxon times are known because they were the focus of an ordeal. The two main definitions of ordeal are a difficult or painful experience, especially one that severely tests character or endurance, and a method of trial in which the accused was subjected to pain or danger as a means of invoking God's intercession, with the outcome regarded as revealing a divine determination of guilt or innocence. Some of you younger nerds, or those of you who are of a certain age, might be familiar with the famous Monty Python sketch in which members of the Spanish Inquisition torture an old lady with a comfy chair and soft pillows, which she enjoys thoroughly. Silly as that might be, let us introduce you to a Saxon punishment that sounds strangely like a Monty Python routine. Yes, you read that right, trial by cake. Here's the deal, the accused would be fed a piece of cake. Should he choke, which in reality meant that in addition to rarely choking, which just had to be rare, a man, and it was usually men, who coughed or spit up the cake was guilty. Off with his head. Imagine, you're given a piece of cake. Your life depends on eating it with no problem. You screw up. Now that's choking on the spot. You can't live that down because you wouldn't have had the chance. All kidding aside, trial, or ordeal by cake, was reserved chiefly for the clergy and the nobility. Yep, you got it, so they could be proven innocent. Still, legend has it that Earl Godwin, father of the famous Harold Godwinson, who was briefly King of England before William the Conqueror took it from him, died in 1053 as a result of trial by cake. By the way, the cake was dry. It wasn't a gimme. In the History Channel series Vikings, there is a scene in which a Christian missionary monk is held by the Vikings and brought to Queen Aslaug for judgment. She orders that the monk be forced to hold a red-hot iron bar, walk a distance, and if the monk's hands don't burn, then it would be pretty apparent to everyone that the Christian God is more powerful than that of the Vikings. The monk has a vision of summoning all of his faith and making it through the trial unscathed. Nope, just a wish. His flesh is severely burnt. Everyone makes fun of him and his god, and that's that. Trial by hot iron was also a Saxon punishment, but it differed from the TV Vikings version a bit. The accused would be forced to take hold of a white-hot iron bar and walk 3 paces with it. If he was able to hold onto the bar for those 3 paces and survive the burns, which beyond being wrapped in cloth were likely not treated, not that it would have mattered much given the state of medicine at the time, then he was not guilty. Yay, except you got it. Most people can't possibly do that. Think about how quickly you recoil when you accidentally touch a hot stove. Now, tough guy, lay your hand flat on the burner for 3 to 5 seconds. I didn't think so. And we're back to Monty Python. Why? Because the logic behind Anglo-Saxon trials was so faulty as almost to be funny. No, it is funny. Now, not then. In Monty Python and the Holy Grail, 1975, a woman is accused of being a witch. As the man in the movie says, "What do we do with witches?" The crowd responds, "Burn 'em." The wise Saxon knight then says, "What else burns?" After some surreal back and forth, the crowd answers, "Wood." Yes, and to get to the point, he leads them through some logic which ends in wood also floats. So do ducks. Therefore, if she weighs the same as a duck, she must be made of wood, and therefore she burns, so she's a witch. Then of course they weigh the woman. The scales show she weighs the same as a duck, and they burn her, off screen. So we know that ducks float, right? Yep. Here's trial by ducking. The accused would have a leg bound upward towards their body, and then they would be thrown into deep water. Suppose the accused floated. They're innocent. They were guilty if they sank, which they almost always did, unless they were the medieval version of Houdini. What's more, body disposed of. Yes, this is true. This was called ordeal by ducking, not dunking. Similar, but different. In Season 4 of Vikings, Saxon King L is killed by the Norsemen's use of the blood eagle. the use of the blood eagle has never been proven to have happened. Moreover, physiologists studying the method have repeatedly concluded that the victim of the blood eagle would always die before the torture got too far. Physiology, gravity, and the force needed to perform the punishment would make it impossible for the lungs to function for any measurable time. Still, there are rumors and 9 written accounts of various kinds written decades and centuries later by the Vikings' enemies. Some English history professors believe the Saxons, including Alfred the Great, used it. Still, the jury is still out, if you pardon the pun. Most criminals found guilty in Saxon Britain, except heinous capital crimes or crimes against the king or one's lord, were likely ordered to pay a fine, even for murder. This was called the weregild, which means man money in Old English. As an aside, the German word for money is geld. Habitual criminals were subject to ever-increasing penalties, including the cutting off of fingers and hands in the case of thieves. Tongues, noses, and ears were also removed at times, and eyes were gouged out on occasion. Ah, the good old days. If watching this video wasn't an ordeal for you, please like and subscribe to our growing channel. Thank you for watching.